Let's look at your bank account through a different lens. Not the one your bank shows you, but your biological ledger. You think you're being helpful. You think you're a good colleague or a loyal friend. But in the cold math of the 1%, you aren't a person. You are a subsidized resource. Every time you say yes to a task that isn't yours, every time you swallow a promotion-killing insult to keep the peace, you aren't being noble. You are performing a wealth transfer. You are taking your most non-renewable asset, your time and attention, and gifting it to people who wouldn't spend a dime to save your life. Being liked isn't a social win. It's a poverty trap. The system loves nice guys. Why? Because they are the ultimate lubricant for the 1%'s machine. The elite don't want you to be a player. They want you to be a utility. They've spent decades engineering a social script where compliance is called professionalism and self-sacrifice is called teamwork. They want you so obsessed with being liked that you become terrified of being effective. Because effectiveness requires friction. It requires saying no. It requires protecting your resources. And the moment you start protecting your resources, you stop being a cheap source of energy for their empire. This is the nice guy tax. It's the highest tax bracket in the world, and most of you are paying a 100% rate. In the next 10 minutes, we are canceling the payment. We're going to install the social engineering protocol. We're going to talk about strategic decoupling, why unpaid social debt is the real secret of the Rockefeller Gambit, and how to build a psychological firewall that treats approval as a liability, not an asset. If you're tired of being the fuel for someone else's jet, it's time to stop being a resource and start being a system architect. Let's audit your life. Most people treat networking like a charity event. You spend your biological capital, your time, your focus, and your emotional energy like it's an infinite resource. You think you're building bridges. The 1% see it differently. You are suffering from social entropy. The elite don't network. They perform resource audits. They don't see a room full of people. They see a social balance sheet. To them, you are either an asset node, someone who increases the system's total value, or you are a liability node, a leak in the pipeline. Before you can build wealth, you have to stop the bleeding. In your world, these are the energy black holes. The people who want to grab a coffee to pick your brain, but never offer a single unit of value in return. Every time you entertain a liability node, you are paying a 100% interest loan on your own future. You aren't being a good friend. You are being a social subsidy. You are literally paying for their mediocrity with your life force. The 1% aren't mean to these people. They simply deprioritize them. They treat their human bandwidth as a premium asset, not a public utility. A power node is a high-yield asset. This is a person who sits at the intersection of capital, influence, and rare information. One transaction with a power node can yield a higher ROI than a decade of being nice to 1,000 NPCs. But here is the reality. You cannot buy access to a power node with a fake smile. These people have elite-level bullshit filters. They don't want your kindness. They want your utility. To enter their orbit, you don't ask for a favor. You provide asymmetric leverage. Find a high-cost problem they are facing and provide a low-cost, high-impact solution. Don't try to be their friend. Try to be their most efficient component. Here's the protocol. Perform a radical audit of your contact list. Apply the 80-20 rule. 80% of your distractions come from 20% of the people who think they own your time. These people are your social debt. The 1% protect their peak performance hours with lethal intent. If someone isn't an asset node, they don't get access to your bandwidth. Stop responding to every low-value notification. Stop attending no-agenda meetings. The system will call you cold. Your old circle will say you've forgotten where you came from. Let them. In the game of high-stakes execution, reputation isn't about being popular. It's about being effective. When you stop subsidizing the 99% with your niceness, you finally have the capital to buy your own freedom. Stop being a resource. Start being the architect. The 99% believe that wealth is a zero-sum game of taking. They think the 1% got rich by being the most selfish people in the room. That's a tactical error. In the social engineering protocol, extreme success is a byproduct of extreme usefulness. The elite don't win by taking, they win by strategic altruism. They don't see kindness as a moral sacrifice. They see it as the Rockefeller Gambit. They understand that the most powerful asset you can own isn't a stock or a bond. It's unpaid social debt. Here is the financial breakdown of your niceness. When you are nice because you're afraid to say no, you are an emotional beggar. You are giving away your time in exchange for a tiny hit of validation, a thank you that doesn't pay the bills. That's a bankrupt strategy. The 1% give to create a massive imbalance in the social ledger. When John D. Rockefeller said he'd rather earn 1% off 100 people's efforts, he was talking about infrastructure. He became the foundational node. When you solve a high-stakes problem for a power node without an immediate ask, you aren't being a martyr. You are buying a call option on their future influence. You are essentially prepaying for a favor that the system will eventually have to settle with massive interest. Human biology has a built-in bug called reciprocity. When you provide massive, unrequested value to someone, their brain treats it as a system deficit. It creates a psychological pressure that won't go away until they balance the books. The 1% spend their lives collecting these deficits. While you're out there trying to get your fair share of the crumbs, they are busy making themselves so essential to the movers of the world that the system physically cannot let them fail. Their net worth isn't just in their bank, it's in the favors owed column of the most powerful people on the map. This is the protocol for strategic altruism. Stop asking, who can help me? And start hunting for asymmetric opportunities to give. Find a power node. Identify a glitch in their operation, something that is cheap for you to fix, but expensive for them to ignore. Fix it. Give it away. Then, the most important part, walk away. This signals that you have so much excess resource that you don't need their immediate payment. It establishes you as a peer, not a servant. You've just successfully converted your time into a long-term asset class. The world is full of resources that the 1% harvest. Don't be one of them. A nice guy is a resource. A strategic altruist is a provider. One is consumed, the other is protected. Stop hoarding your small change and start investing your high-impact value. In the social engineering protocol, the one who is liked is a tool, but the one who is owed is the king. Let's perform a cost-benefit analysis on your need for approval. Every minute you spend worrying about what your nice guy social circle thinks of you is a minute of unpaid emotional labor. You are essentially working a second job for a boss that doesn't pay you in a company that is designed to keep you broke. When your self-worth is an open-source project that any random stranger can edit, your market value hits zero. You have no brand equity because you have no boundaries. The 1% understand something the 99% are too nice to admit. Uncontrolled empathy is a security vulnerability. If I can make you feel guilty for being successful, I can tax your progress. If I can make you feel mean for saying no, I can harvest your time for free. The system has conditioned you to be sensitive to feedback so that you remain programmable. They want you so reactive to social signals that you never stay on course long enough to build a real empire. You are constantly recalculating your route based on the opinions of people who aren't even in the game. The elite don't have thick skin. They have a high-performance filter. When they receive a critique, they don't ask, "Does this hurt?" They ask, "Is this data or is this noise?" If a power node points out a flaw in your business model, that is high-value data. It's a free system upgrade. Strip away the ego and install the fix. But if an NPC criticizes your arrogance or your sudden change, that is system noise. It's just background radiation from the 99% simulation. To a player, noise is invisible. To build wealth, you must stop being the service and start being the system admin. Stop seeing yourself as the victim of social pressure. When someone tries to shame you into being more agreeable, recognize it as an unauthorized access attempt to your mental server. A player doesn't get offended. A player audits the intent. If the intent is to control your resources, the firewall stays up. If the intent is to optimize the output, the data gets processed. Here is the ultimate economic truth. Your capacity to be unlikable is directly proportional to your capacity to own your life. If you aren't willing to be the villain in a loser's story, you will never have the capital to be the hero in your own. The 1% accept that their effectiveness will make people uncomfortable. They don't want the cheap dopamine of being liked. They want the compound interest of being respected. Stop trying to be the most agreeable resource in the room. Start being the most immune. In the social engineering protocol, the one who doesn't need your validation is the one who ultimately sets the price. The system loves to praise your hustle and your helpful nature. It wants you to feel guilty if you aren't doing something for someone else every waking second. But in the game of the 1%, uncalculated activity isn't a virtue. It's a resource leak. You're exhausted because you're operating on NPC economics. The belief that if you just chase enough rabbits, you'll eventually become a king. It's time to install the predator's economy. A gray wolf in a brutal winter doesn't chase every rabbit it sees. Why? Because chasing a rabbit costs 500 calories, but eating it only provides 400. That is a metabolic debt. If the wolf is hardworking and catches 10 rabbits, it dies of starvation. The wolf only moves when the ROI is asymmetric. It saves its fire for the elk. As a nice guy, you are that starving wolf. Every time you agree to a quick coffee to give free advice or take on a low-level task because you're too nice to delegate, you are chasing a rabbit. You are spending 500 calories of your precious biological capital for a 10-calorie return in social approval. By the time an elk-level opportunity appears, a life-changing deal, or a strategic partnership, you are too depleted to strike. You've essentially spent your entire career subsidizing the 99% with your own energy. Your niceness is the reason you are in a state of strategic bankruptcy. The 1% practice strategic decoupling. They ruthlessly disconnect their time from low-leverage activities. They don't say no because they're mean. They say no because they understand the math of survival. They know that every yes to a distraction is a no to their destiny. When you ask a high-performance player for a favor that doesn't align with their mission, they aren't rejecting you. They are protecting the combustion chamber of their ambition. They refuse to let their fire be used to keep someone else's room warm while they freeze in the dark. Here is the protocol. If it isn't a hell yes, it's a no. You must develop the capacity for the brutal no. Stop giving long-winded excuses. Excuses are just a way of asking for permission to be yourself. A player doesn't need permission. "I can't prioritize that right now" is a complete sentence. Your nice guy brain will scream that you're being selfish. Good. Selfishness, when applied to your core mission, is the only way to avoid becoming a social asset for others to harvest. The world doesn't need more people who are busy being distracted. It needs people who are cold enough to be effective. Stop measuring your worth by the length of your to-do list. Start measuring it by the size of the elk you've taken down. The 1% move slow. They observe deeply, and they strike rarely. But when they do, they change the map. Stop chasing rabbits. Stop paying the metabolic tax of being agreeable. In the predator's economy, the one who tries to do everything for everyone ends up as a carcass. The one who refuses the small stuff is the one who eventually owns the forest. Let's be honest. The weight of being liked is the heaviest debt you've ever carried. It's the invisible tax that kept your bank account empty and your schedule full. It's the reason you've spent your life subsidizing other people's dreams while yours sat in the dark, waiting for a permission that was never going to come. You were so busy making sure everyone else was comfortable that you forgot you were the one going bankrupt. Today, we officially stop the wealth transfer. The nice guy was a high-yield resource for the system, but he was a failed investment for you. True kindness doesn't come from a place of weakness or a need for approval. It comes from a place of power. When you have the strength to be dangerous, but choose to be useful, that is virtue. When you are simply too afraid to say no, that is just a system error. By installing the social engineering protocol, you aren't becoming a villain. You are becoming the architect of your own economy. The air is thin at the top because most people can't survive without the oxygen of public approval. The 1% are comfortable in the silence of being misunderstood. They are fine with being called cold or different by people who are still paying the nice guy tax. Why? Because they know that when you stop begging for a thank you, you start receiving dividends. When you stop chasing every rabbit, you start owning the forest. Imagine the version of you that exists 6 months from now. The version of you who treats their time like a premium asset. The version who sees through social manipulation as if it were lines of failing code. The person who finally stopped being a resource for the 1% and started building their own empire. That person isn't a dream. They are a system upgrade away. You have the tools now. The Social Audit, the Rockefeller Gambit, the feedback firewall, and the predator's economy. The simulation is designed to keep you nice, so it can keep you poor. But you aren't a resource to be harvested anymore. You are a player who has finally mastered the mechanics of the game. Stop asking for directions from people who aren't going where you want to go. Stop subsidizing the world with your self-worth. The script is in your hands.